Hey guys, tonight we wander back through time into muddy streets, candlelit hovels, and the creaking dread of something much darker lurking behind the hay and hymns. Welcome to the Middle Ages, where science takes a backseat to superstition, and the most terrifying thing in town might be the doctor, or the baker, or the rats. You're breathing it in already, aren't you? That damp, musty smell of overcrowded alleys. There's no plumbing, just buckets, chamber pots, and a general acceptance that waste goes wherever gravity decides. You pass someone on the street and they cough. Just a little. But now you're worried. Because in this world, one cough might mean you're marked. You probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments, where are you watching from and what time is it right now? Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. It starts with a rat, or rather a flea. A tiny stowaway hidden in the fur of a rodent that scurries through the straw under your bed. It bites. You don't notice. But by morning you've got a lump the size of a walnut growing under your arm. You think it's a boil. You've seen boils before. But this one is hot, angry, and smells wrong. Within hours, more appear. One in your groin. One on your neck. Your skin turns grayish. Your fingers go cold. You try to stand, but the room tilts. That's when you know you've got the plague. The Black Death wasn't just one disease. It was three: bubonic, septicemic, and pneumonic. You, unfortunately, seem to be sampling all of them. First comes the buboes, those swollen lymph nodes that feel like someone stuck rocks under your skin. Then the fever hits. And finally, if you're unlucky enough to cough, you start spreading it just by breathing. Historians still argue whether it was the plague itself or the breakdown of sanitation that caused the highest death tolls. But really, who cares? You're on day 3 of infection and your best friend just nailed your door shut from the outside. Outside, townsfolk walk around with posies, bundles of herbs meant to ward off the bad air. One quirky detail? Some doctors believe the plague was caused by misaligned planets. Yep, Mars and Jupiter conspiring to end your week early. Medieval astronomy meets medieval medicine, a true power couple of confusion. If you're lucky enough to be noticed by a physician, well, bad news again. He shows up wearing a beaked mask stuffed with herbs. The smell, he says, will keep away death. But that long robe and cane? More theater than therapy. He doesn't have antibiotics. He doesn't even have soap. What he does have is a firm belief in draining the sickness from your body. He lances your buboes, without washing his hands. He draws blood from your arms, then your feet, then your arms again. You feel lightheaded. Not from healing, just blood loss. There's a good chance you'll die from the treatment before the disease finishes the job. Maybe someone suggests a pilgrimage, or a flagellation. If you're sinning, maybe you deserve the plague. So they march through the streets, whipping themselves, crying out to heaven for mercy. You watch from your sickbed as they pass, red lines crisscrossing their backs, blood dripping into the mud. Their passion is loud. Their theology is questionable. Their survival rate? Depressingly low. You're not eating. Not that it matters. Food tastes like sawdust. Water makes you gag. You're cold and then you're burning. And as you drift in and out of consciousness, you hear church bells. Not just one. Dozens. The dead are piling up and the living can't dig graves fast enough. Outside your window, carts roll by. Bring out your dead, they shout. And someone's calling your name. You try to speak. To say, no, I'm not ready. I'm not done. But your lips don't move. And if you recover, congratulations. You're scarred. Weak, and viewed with suspicion. People whisper about survivors. Some think you're cursed. Others think you're blessed. And a few are just waiting for your symptoms to return. You might get a tattoo to mark your survival. Or a coin pressed into your hand by a grateful family. But deep down, you know you came close. Closer than you ever want to be again. But don't get too confident. The plague never really goes away. It lingers. It waits. Rats scurry beneath the floorboards. Fleas hide in the seams of your cloak. And every time you hear a cough or see a bubo or smell that sour sweet rot, you remember. And so you close your eyes praying you'll wake up. But sleep feels heavy, like it's wrapping around your limbs, pulling you deeper. You dream of bells, of dark robes, of rats with red eyes, whispering secrets in the night. The plague doesn't knock on your door. It picks the lock, slips in, and takes whatever it wants. You've made it through the plague, barely. Your skin is still patchy, your hair might be thinning, and food still doesn't taste quite right. But you're alive, and that's saying something. So now you try to return to normal. You eat, you sleep, you maybe go back to work at the mill or the forge or the fields. And then it happens. Your neighbor's daughter starts screaming in the middle of the night. Not the scared of the dark kind of screaming. The real kind, the kind that echoes down stone alleys and makes dogs stop barking. By the next morning, she's clawing at her skin, eyes wide and rolling, convinced bugs are crawling under her flesh. She says she sees fire in her veins. No one knows what to do. They try prayers. They try cold water. They try binding her arms. Nothing works. A few days later, it's your turn. It starts in your fingertips. A strange tingling like ants dancing just beneath the skin. You laugh it off. Maybe you work too hard. Maybe the loom is pulling your muscles out of place. But then the colors begin. The walls shimmer. The dirt road outside twists and pulses like it's breathing. And the shadows, they start to move even when the candles don't. You've eaten the bread. That's what happened. Not just any bread, though. This batch was made with rye harvested in a particularly damp season. And that rye was infected with ergot. Ergot is a fungus. It grows in wet, poorly stored grains. Looks a little like a dark husk at the edge of the stalk. The bakers miss it sometimes. But your nervous system doesn't. Once you eat it, the alkaloids hijack your body. Hallucinations, seizures, convulsions, burning skin, even gangrene. Some people feel like their limbs are on fire, hence the old nickname, St. Anthony's Fire. Historians still argue whether entire outbreaks of possession and witchcraft in medieval towns were just large-scale cases of ergot poisoning. Imagine that, your local witch trial sparked by moldy toast. One particularly weird case comes from a village in France, where dozens of people went mad within a week. Some tried to fly off roofs. Others stripped naked and ran into the woods howling. A few simply curled up and whispered nonsense until their voices gave out. The monks recorded it as divine punishment. But centuries later, scientists found ergot in the surviving grain stores. And that's not even the worst part. Sometimes the poison doesn't take you quickly. It lingers. Your fingertips start turning purple, then black. Gangrene sets in. The doctors think your body is possessed. You think so too. It feels like something inside you is eating its way out. The pain is so intense, so constant that you stop screaming. You just go quiet. A kind of eerie acceptance sets in. Your neighbors stop visiting. The local priest hesitates to bless your room. No one wants to catch whatever madness you've got. So you lie there, drifting in and out of fever dreams. You see faces in the rafters. Hear whispers in the fire. You beg for water, but when they hand it to you, it feels like acid on your tongue. Sometimes the poison fades. Your body survives, shaky and scarred. Other times your limbs rot right off. The fire inside wins. They bury you under a thin blanket of earth, too scared to give you proper rites. One quirky detail: some monasteries built entire wards dedicated to caring for burning victims. They believed St. Anthony could cure them. Pilgrims walked hundreds of miles to reach these hospitals. A few recovered. Most did not. You try to retrace your steps. You remember that loaf, cheap, a bit gray around the edges. You were hungry. Who wasn't poor harvests meant everyone was desperate. The baker wasn't evil. He was just poor and cold and trying to make enough to survive. And you? You just wanted a warm meal. But now your stomach twists at the memory. Bread, something so comforting, has become a curse. The funny part is you still don't know what's happening. You think it's punishment. For gossip. For stealing a goose. For that time you skipped mass. Everyone around you agrees. A bad soul. A wandering demon. Maybe even the devil himself. No one knows it's just fungus. So the bread keeps getting baked. The villagers keep getting sick. And you keep seeing shadows that whisper your name in the dark. You used to joke that you'd kill for a hot meal. Now you're dying from one. You haven't eaten for 2 days. The bread's all gone, the root cellar's empty, and your mouth is dry as old parchment. The town's been under siege for weeks, maybe months. No one's keeping count anymore. At first there was still hope. The walls held, spirits stayed high, and someone even managed to play music on a broken lute one night. But now the jokes have stopped. So has the lute. Everything smells like sweat and sour meat. There's no more firewood, so cooking has become a luxury. Most people just chew leather or soak grain in whatever water's left to make it seem less like starvation. You've seen rats. Not the scurrying kind either. The hanging kind, skinned and salted if you're lucky. If not, they're just scorched black over a weak flame, still twitching. You always imagined a siege as loud. Clashing swords, roaring catapults, drums. But no, most days it's just quiet. The kind of quiet that makes your stomach growl sound like a betrayal. You hear a scream now and then, someone losing it. Or worse, someone discovering there's been a break-in at the grain store. Historians still argue whether more people died from enemy attacks or from their own desperation during long medieval sieges. Whatever the truth is, right now you're losing to your own belly. The hunger makes you mean. Not just grumpy, truly savage. You snap at your neighbor because he has a slice of onion. You lie to a child for the last sip of broth. You dream of roasted chicken but wake up gnawing your own sleeve. It started subtly. First, people sold their furniture for food. Then jewelry. Then it was fingers pointed at whoever still looked vaguely healthy. The baker's wife went missing a few days ago. No one speaks about it, but no one's looking either. You hear whispers that the tanner's apprentice had stew that didn't smell quite right. You hope they're wrong. You really do. You used to gag at the sight of spoiled meat. Now you scrape mold off with a knife and thank the heavens you found anything at all. Rats, dogs, even pigeons, gone. Either eaten or smart enough to flee. The bishop offered prayers. The guards still pace the walls. But their faces are gaunt, their hands trembling. The arrows in their quivers stay unused, not from peace, but from weakness. They can't draw the bowstrings anymore. You sit in the corner of a cold room, next to a barrel that once held pickled cabbage. It's empty now, but you lick the inside anyway, hoping for some leftover taste. Your tongue goes numb from the vinegar. You take it as a win. One quirky tidbit. During the siege of Jerusalem in the First Crusade, some knights were reported to have eaten the leather from their saddles. One chronicler swore a group boiled parchment scrolls just to sip the glue. You're not far from that. Your boot laces are already missing. The belt around your waist is gone. You glance at a candle and wonder, just for a moment, if the wax would sit right in your stomach. A man outside is dragging a dead horse through the mud. The animal looks more bone than flesh, but people gather anyway. There'll be a lottery for who gets what. I'd. Maybe a scrap of rib meat. You know you'll have to fight for your share. And you will. You remember food in flashes now. The taste of honey. The crunch of an apple. The way bread used to steam when pulled from the oven. These memories feel crueler than the hunger. Like ghosts of a world that doesn't belong to you anymore. No one talks much. Talking takes energy. You just sit together, breathing each other's breath and waiting. Waiting for the gate to fall. Waiting for a miracle. Waiting to stop feeling your stomach scream. You begin to feel cold even in full daylight. That's how you know your body is giving up. It's conserving energy. Shutting down things it no longer considers essential. Like your toes. Like your hope. You think about escaping, but the last man who tried was shot before he reached the outer ditch. His body lay there for days untouched. Not from respect. Just no one had the strength to bury him. And still the enemy waits. Outside the walls, they've got firewood and warm food and drink. You can smell it when the wind blows just right. They're not in a rush. Why would they be? They know starvation does what swords cannot. Your last clear thought comes while watching a woman chew a piece of rope. You wonder what it tastes like. You wonder if she'd share. And then you stop wondering altogether. You're not even sick this time. Not starving. Not wounded. But somehow this is worse. You're standing in a muddy square, barefoot and shaking, as the village gathers with an eagerness that feels colder than the morning air. The crowd's energy is twisted, part curiosity, part bloodlust. The man beside you says a prayer under his breath. You don't know if he's praying for himself, for you, or for the firewood stacked behind you. You've been accused. Not of theft. Not even of murder. No, something far more dangerous in this age of superstition. Sorcery. Witchcraft. Heresy. And worst of all, you can't prove you're innocent, because in the medieval world, innocence has nothing to do with evidence. It's about signs. Omens. And your neighbor's goat getting sick on the same day you mumbled to yourself in the garden. They say you curse the harvest, that your touch spoiled milk, that you walk at night when decent people sleep, that you float. You'd laugh if your knees weren't locked in place from terror. Now the choice is yours, sort of. Trial by fire or trial by water. Pick fire and you'll walk barefoot across burning planks. If your feet blister, you're guilty. If they don't, God has saved you. Pick water and they tie your hands and toss you into the river. Sink and you're innocent. Drown probably. Float and you're in league with the devil. Either way, someone's lighting a torch. Historians still argue whether these trials were sincerely believed or just theatrics meant to control the masses. Either way, people like you were the ones tossed in rivers or dragged to the stake. You pick water. They bind your wrists, rough rope biting into your skin. Then they walk you to the river where it's cold and still and the color of bruises. The priest says a few words. The crowd leans in. And then you're falling. The water hits like a slap. It's deeper than you thought. You twist, kick, try to sink, but the ropes hold your arms stiff and your tunic traps air. You float. Not gracefully. Not fully. But just enough. They see it. And that's all they need. They drag you out coughing, soaked, shaking. You want to shout. You want to scream that this is madness. But the crowd has made up its mind. And that's the only truth that matters. They set the stake by nightfall. The wood is damp, but not enough to matter. You're tied upright. Someone sobs in the crowd. Someone else throws a rock. A man with kind eyes whispers that if you confess, they might be merciful. You ask what mercy looks like. He says strangulation before the flames reach your face. Quirky detail: some towns actually hired specialists called charm breakers, whose job was to examine your ashes after burning. If your heart remained unburnt, it was proof you had resisted repentance. Even in death you were guilty. As the flames catch, smoke fills your lungs. You don't feel heat yet, just pressure. Your skin tightens. Your mouth goes dry. And then pain. Searing, crawling, all-consuming pain that bites down deeper than anything has before. You close your eyes and think of rain. You think of snow, of cool rivers, of wind in the trees. You try to leave your body behind. Let it burn. Let the flames have it. But your mind is stubborn. It stays. Feels everything. And still the crowd watches. Because this isn't just punishment. It's spectacle. A warning. A story they'll whisper at bedsides. And in those stories you'll always be guilty. Eventually the flames die down. The air smells like ash and scorched wool. Children are shooed away. Ashes are buried or scattered. And life somehow returns to normal. But your name lingers. It floats through the village like smoke. Because long after you're gone, the fear that put you here survives. There's a quiet horror in the battlefield that no one tells you about. Not in songs, not in the stories of knights, and definitely not in the sermons given by those who've never held a blade. It's not the clash of steel or the screams. It's what happens after. You're a foot soldier. That means no fancy armor, no noble lineage, no warhorse with its own polished saddle. You've got boiled leather on your chest, maybe a rusted helmet if you're lucky, and a spear that's seen better days. You fight because you're told to, or because the Lord promised you a coin, or food, or worst of all, honor. The battle doesn't start with a trumpet. It starts with the thud of boots in mud. Dozens of men running, sprinting, toward a wall of other men doing the exact same thing. It's chaos before a single sword is drawn. And then the noise hits you. Steel on steel. Wood cracking. Screams that don't sound human. The first man you stab doesn't die immediately. He collapses, clutching at his thigh, which now looks like red soup. Someone else steps on his hand and keeps going. There's no time to look back. A horse comes out of nowhere. Its flank crashes into your shoulder, sending you sprawling. You can't hear anymore. There's a ringing in your ears, like the scream of a boiling kettle. Then comes the arrow. Not a noble sword. Not a hero's duel. Just a piece of wood with a sharp bit on the end, fired by someone you'll never see. It sinks into your thigh. You fall again, screaming. Not from pain, yet, but because you know what comes next. Trampled. That's the word. You don't just get stepped on. You're crushed, mashed into the ground under dozens of boots, hooves, and bodies. Someone trips over you and curses. Someone else uses your back to get more height as they lunge forward. You're not a person anymore. You're terrain. Historians still argue whether medieval armies even had medical corps worth the name. Most likely you just lay there. Until someone checked if you were worth the trouble. If not, they left you. If you were lucky, and luck here is relative, someone dragged you behind the lines. That's where the real nightmare begins. No anesthesia. No sterilization. No clean tools. The field surgeon is really just the least squeamish person in the camp, probably a barber when he's not sawing through limbs. You beg him not to cut, but he's already pulling out the bone saw. The arrow wound is infected. Your skin is hot and tight. The flesh around it has turned grayish. Sweet-smelling pus leaks out. That's not good. They used to think that meant your body was purging the bad humors. Now we know it means you're already halfway to the grave. You bite down on a stick. The saw starts. It doesn't glide. It grinds. Through flesh. Through muscle. And then the bone. You feel the vibrations in your skull. You try to scream, but your throat locks up. All that comes out is a low grunt, like a dying ox. Quirky fact. Some soldiers requested to be bled before surgeries, thinking it would calm them down. All it really did was make them weaker. After the amputation, there's no clean bandage. Just old linen, maybe rinsed in ale if you're lucky. They don't know about germs. They think the smell means healing. So when your stump starts to blacken and the fever hits, they assume it's normal. Until it isn't. You shiver in the night. You cry for your mother. You see faces in the flickering torchlight that aren't really there. Some of them smile. Some just watch. You try to sit up and fall back down, dizzy. You feel the infection crawling, spreading, wrapping around your lungs. Your breath comes in gasps. Someone offers you wine. Not to help, just to quiet you down. You don't get a funeral. Just a shallow trench dug beside the others. Bodies piled in like meat in a butcher's cart. A quick prayer if someone's feeling generous. Otherwise just dirt. Lots of it. And your sword? Taken. Maybe melted down. Maybe handed to the next poor soul who gets shoved onto a battlefield and told to fight for glory. You wonder, as your heartbeat slows, whether the men who sent you here remember your name. Probably not. They'll just recruit more. You never thought a simple cough could be your death sentence. But here you are, hunched over in a filthy alleyway behind a tanner's shop, wrapped in a damp blanket that used to belong to someone who, presumably, isn't coughing anymore. The fever is back. Your breath rattles. You try to stand, but the world tilts sideways. You end up on your knees, vomiting blackish bile into the mud. Again. It started innocently, a little tickle in the throat, maybe some chills. You blamed the cold air or the bad stew at the inn. But then your lymph nodes swelled. Not just puffy, but huge, purple and hard like rocks. Boils bloomed in your armpits, your groin, behind your ears. One burst last night while you were sleeping. You woke up sticky and too tired to scream. They call it the pestilence, or just the great dying. You call it your new reality. And in this medieval town, tight alleys, shared chambers, everyone breathing the same air, it spreads faster than rumors after church. People start avoiding you. Even the beggars cross themselves and step back. You're not just sick, you're marked. Historians still argue whether the plague arrived first through fleas on rats or infected textiles traded from the east. Either way, it didn't knock. It kicked down the door and set the whole continent on fire. You shuffle to the well, hoping for a little water, but someone shrieks when they see your face. A child throws a stone at you. A stone. You cough and stumble back, wondering if it's worth fighting over something as basic as dignity. You decide it isn't. That's the worst part. It's not the pain, it's the slow erasure of your humanity. The way people stop calling you by name and start calling you it. Quirky belief of the time? People thought sweet smells could drive out the plague. So now every noble is walking around with a pomander, a little ball of crushed herbs and perfume hanging from a chain. You meanwhile reek of rot and sweat. Not exactly helpful for your social life. At night the bell tolls. Not for church. For the dead cart. You hear the clatter of wheels, the groan of wood, the shuffle of feet. Bring out your dead, someone chants like it's a nursery rhyme. A few doors open. Limp bodies are tossed into the cart like logs. One twitches. No one notices. You stay quiet. You're not ready. Not yet. You retreat to the abandoned church. The priest stopped coming days ago, after coughing up blood mid-sermon. You light a candle. Not because you're religious, but because you're scared. And candlelight makes it feel just a little less real. There's an old tapestry on the wall. It shows St. Michael defeating the devil. You stare at it for a long time, wondering if he takes requests. Your stomach cramps. You double over. Your skin is cold, but you're sweating like it's harvest season. Time loses meaning. You hallucinate voices, your mother's lullaby, the echo of a sermon, someone whispering your name. But no one is there. Eventually you can't walk. You crawl. Across the cold stone floor. Past rats that don't even flinch anymore. Toward the altar. Historians still argue whether the plague killed 1/3 or half the population of Europe. Either way, you're not a person anymore. You're a number. You die sometime before dawn. Alone. Mouth open. Eyes half shut. No final words. No farewell. Just silence. Someone finds your body later, maybe a grave digger, maybe another sick soul looking for shelter. They don't scream. They've seen worse. You're taken in a sheet, dumped into a mass grave outside the town walls. No marker. No prayer. Just dirt. So much dirt. And above you, life goes on. Someone laughs. Someone sings. Someone steals a pair of shoes from a dying man and walks away whistling. Because in this world, the plague isn't just death. It's economy. It's politics. It's a reshaping of everything, and you're just one more crack in the old structure. If it's any comfort, you're not alone. Your bones will lie beside thousands. The torches flicker low in the keep, throwing crooked shadows across the stone walls. You're shackled now, ankles and wrists, iron biting through skin that already feels too thin. You haven't seen sunlight in days. The dungeon stinks of mildew, sweat, and something darker you can't quite name. Rats scurry across your feet like you're part of the architecture. You were taken at night. Hooded, dragged from your bed, accused of something vague. Treason maybe? Insulting the Baron's niece? Could have just been being in the wrong place with the wrong expression. Doesn't matter. Now you're in the hands of the torturer. And in medieval justice, that's less a job title, more a career in creative suffering. The man in the corner is sharpening something. A blade, perhaps, or your imagination. He doesn't introduce himself. He doesn't need to. The room says it all. Iron Maiden in one corner, thumbscrews on the table, a rack that creaks even when no one's lying on it. You're part of a performance now, except the only applause comes when you scream. Torture in this era isn't about sadism, well, not officially. It's about extracting truth. Which is funny because everyone knows truth and agony don't mix. You'd confess to kissing a dragon if it meant stopping the pain. Historians still argue whether medieval torture was truly effective or just a blunt instrument used to speed along trials that were already decided. They ask you questions you don't understand. Who were your accomplices? Where's the letter? You blink through the tears and say nothing. So they start slow. The rack. Wooden frame, rope, pulleys. They turn the crank and your joints protest first. Shoulders stretching, hips grinding, back screaming louder than your throat. You try to breathe through it. Bad idea. Breathing feels like inhaling gravel. They pause just long enough for hope to sneak in, then crank again. Snap. That one sound, that deep pop in your shoulder, stays with you louder than the questions. And they keep asking, of course. Like maybe you'll suddenly remember some secret you never had. Quirky fact, some torturers actually had manuals complete with diagrams. Techniques were codified like recipes. 3 turns of the screw for liars, 5 for thieves. Efficiency even in agony. Eventually they stop. Not because they believe you, just because they think you'll talk more tomorrow. They dump you in a cell no bigger than a wardrobe. You curl into yourself, shaking. Every joint hums with pain. You'd cry but you're too tired. Even tears cost energy you don't have. You try to sleep. Rats nest in the hay beside your face. One of them licks blood from your finger like it's sharing a secret. You try not to think about it. Morning or something close to it brings more questioning. They don't bother to feed you, just more pulling, more twisting. This time it's the pair. A metal device inserted and expanded slowly. You scream until your voice gives out. Then you just whimper. Then you stop altogether. Words don't mean anything anymore. Not when everything in your body feels like it's being rewritten. Historians still argue whether highborn prisoners were spared the worst tools. Some were ransomed. Others simply vanished. You, however, are nobody. No titles, no leverage. Just one more puzzle for the torturer to solve with pressure and steel. You lose track of time. Hunger becomes a kind of madness. You hallucinate things, sunlight, soft beds, apples. You'd kill for an apple. Instead you get shackles. They try water next. Not drowning, just endless pouring drop by drop onto your forehead while you're bound and unable to move. It sounds harmless, almost gentle. It isn't. It grinds away at you. Like time itself is boring through your skull. Eventually they bring you back to the main chamber. The Baron's steward is there now too. He looks bored. Asks you to confess again. You open your mouth and say yes to everything. Yes, you did it. Whatever it is, you'll sign. You'll scream it from the tower. Just please, please let it end. They smile. Not because you confessed, but because they've broken you. The trial, when it comes, is short. A few formalities, then the sentence. Naturally. But they say it with ceremony as if anyone's surprised. They let you choose your method. Beheading, hanging, or flaying. It's like being offered 3 doors, all leading to the same hell. You whisper, beheading. It's the fastest. But they say, no sword today. Too dull. Hanging then. Of course. You're led through town, barely able to walk. People spit. Someone throws cabbage. Kids run beside the cart, laughing. You want to ask them if they know what laughter sounds like when you're dying. You stand beneath the gallows. The noose is scratchy. The wood under your feet damp. You're trembling, not from fear anymore, but from the sheer weight of what has been done to you. They ask if you have any last words. You try to speak. All that comes out is a ragged breath. They kick the stool, and you swing. The tavern door swings open with a shriek of unoiled hinges and slams behind you with a gust of cold wind and hoarse stink. Inside, it's thick with smoke, sweat, and the ever-present tang of ale that's been poured more times than it should have been. The fire crackles and there's music, bad music, played on a lute that's clearly lost 2 strings too many. You blink through the haze and squeeze past a table where 3 men argue over who's cheating at dice, their knuckles white around tankards big enough to brain a boar. You just came for something warm to drink. Maybe a stew. Maybe a moment of peace. Instead, you're walking into the medieval version of a powder keg soaked in mead. No one trusts a stranger in a medieval tavern, especially one who still has all their teeth. You're watched from the moment you step in. And unfortunately, it doesn't take much to tip things from tense to terminal. A glance held too long. A poorly timed laugh. An innocent bump on your way to the bar. And now, the man you brushed against is rising slowly, face already redder than the fire. He asked you what you said. You didn't say anything. He asks again louder. And this time his friend stands up too. Maybe they've had too much. Maybe they've just had the wrong kind of day. Either way, you're now the evening's entertainment. Tavern brawls in the Middle Ages weren't pub scuffles with playful slaps and a barkeep breaking it up. No. These were often vicious, bone-breaking, sometimes fatal free-for-alls with tankards, stools, and whatever sharp thing someone could pull from their belt. Historians still argue whether these brawls were truly spontaneous or half-planned rituals of status and bravado, but one thing's certain, they rarely ended with everyone walking out upright. The first hit comes fast. A slap? No, more like a hammer. Your jaw explodes with pain as your head spins, and the room seems to tilt sideways. You try to steady yourself, but your legs have ideas of their own. The tavern cheers. Not for you. You fall against a table, upsetting a tray of stewed turnips. The barmaid shrieks. And now it's chaos. A jug smashes behind you. A bench is flying, literally flying, across the room. Someone's dog starts barking in the corner, and a man laughs just before vomiting onto his own shoes. You're grappling now, slipping in beer and blood. Your opponent pulls a dagger, but it's small and his hand is shaking. You knock it away, but not before it kisses your forearm. Warmth spreads fast down your sleeve. You don't even notice the second man. Not until the stool crashes into your back. You crumple. Face pressed into the sticky floor, you wonder what day it is. Then someone's knee slams into your ribs. Then again. A tankard shatters against your shoulder. Someone yells, "Get the guards." Someone else yells, "Finish him." One guy, perhaps a regular who's had one ale too few, tries to drag you under a table. "Just play dead," he hisses like it's a life hack. You do your best impression of a corpse. It's not hard. Quirky fact, some towns had official ale conners, whose job was to test the strength and quality of ale. Not for safety, just to make sure it wasn't watered down. You kind of wish one was here now, mostly to save you from drowning in the puddle of your own possibly poisoned beer. Eventually the clamor dies down. The 2 men who started it are breathing heavy. One has a cut over his eye. The other is missing a tooth. You're bleeding from somewhere, possibly everywhere, but mostly you're just grateful to still be conscious. Mostly. The town guard arrives with dramatic clanking and no urgency. They step over you and arrest 3 people who definitely didn't throw the first punch. Justice is, as always, selectively applied. You're left on the floor. The tavern keeper curses and tells you to clean up your mess. You try to stand. That's funny. Somehow you make it outside. The air is cold and sharp like a knife to the lungs. Your shirt sticks to your ribs where the dagger sliced you earlier, and your jaw clicks in a way jaws shouldn't. Still, you're lucky. You've heard of worse. There was a man who insulted the wrong knight in a tavern last winter. They say his teeth are still stuck in the ceiling beam. Taverns were more than watering holes. They were political hubs, gossip centers, and boiling pots of tension. One man's bad day could spiral into a dozen funerals, especially if the wrong noble happened to be slumming it in disguise. Scholars still debate whether kings and knights frequently drank among commoners, but tavern tales always have a Sir So-and-so in the shadows element to them. You limp toward a haystack behind the stables and curl up. The horses ignore you. Your ribs throb with every breath. Your face is swollen. And you still didn't get that stew. A faint snore escapes you. A dog curls beside your leg. Warmth at last. Just as your eyes close, someone yells again inside the tavern. You don't move. Let them fight. You're done being the main event. Your eyes open with the slow ache of someone who's aged 10 years overnight. You're still behind the tavern, the straw has turned damp under you, and your ribs greet you with a familiar grinding complaint. You sit up, barely, and everything creaks. Your cloak smells like a goat walked over it, which, judging by the hoofprint, might not be entirely metaphorical. But the day waits for no one, especially not the nearly trampled. You're not nobility. You don't own land. You're not even a tradesman with a cozy shop and mediocre pottery to your name. No, you're a laborer like most of the people scratching out an existence in the muddy fringes of the medieval world. Today you're a ditch digger. Yesterday you carried grain sacks. Tomorrow, if you survive today, you might be hauling stone up a hill for a noble's vanity castle. Assuming your back doesn't simply give up and quit the job first. You trudge toward the field, a battered tool slung over your shoulder like a broken promise. Your hands are swollen, blistered, and already dirty. And the sun hasn't even cracked the sky yet. In medieval times, most people lived one bad harvest away from ruin. Even free peasants were tied to the land through rent, obligation, or debt that stretched back generations. Historians still argue whether peasants had more free time than modern workers. Yes, really, but it's hard to relax when your house is made of twigs and anxiety. You arrive at the worksite and immediately feel the sting of smoke and cold fog. The overseer, who gets to wear boots, grunts something about picking up the pace. You try not to breathe too deeply because the air smells of wet livestock and dying dreams. You start digging. Your fingers slip on the handle. The ache in your back settles in like an old friend. By mid-morning, you've lifted more earth than you thought possible. Your shirt clings to your back like seaweed, and the tool has carved a raw patch into your palm. You get no break, just a crust of bread and a look from the overseer that says, "Don't get used to it." Funny side fact? In some places, workers were paid in ale. Not coins, not bread, just liquid calories and probable dehydration. You consider how much ale it would take to forget the pain in your spine. Then realize you can't afford any. Someone collapses next to you. It's Thomas. Poor guy's barely 30 but looks 60. He doesn't move for a few long seconds. Then he rolls over, mutters something about saints and his mother, and forces himself up again. You help him, not out of kindness exactly, but because if he dies, you'll probably get his share of work. You think back to your neighbor. He was a miner. Fell down a shaft when the rope frayed. They left him there. Not because they didn't care, but because no one had the strength to haul him out. His ghost, they say, still coughs in the tunnels. The hours stretch long and flat. Your shadow crawls beside you, lazily melting into the earth you're breaking apart. Every movement now is automatic. Lift, turn, dump, wince. You're moving like a machine, except there are no machines and you're not replaceable. You're just very, very expendable. By sundown, your legs shake. Your shoulders feel like they've been hit with tavern stools. Oh wait, they have. You trudge home, which is a very generous word for a damp hovel with one window and a fire that only sometimes stays lit. Inside, your family waits. You give them what you earned, half a turnip, some cracked barley, and whatever dignity you had left at sunrise. You collapse onto a bed of straw which pokes you in all the wrong places. No mattress. No blanket. Just straw and sore muscles and dreams of not waking up at 4 a.m. again. There's no retirement plan. No insurance. No weekends. Your life is work and your death will likely come during it, or because of it. Either your body breaks or something breaks you. Historians still debate whether medieval people truly understood their suffering or simply accepted it as the will of God. But when your body is your only tool and the land is both your job and your jailer, the difference hardly matters. At least it's quiet now. Outside, a dog barks somewhere in the dark. A cart rolls past slowly. Someone is singing off-key down the road, maybe drunk, maybe delirious. You almost envy them. Your hand twitches. Your feet ache like they've walked 1,000 miles. You think about tomorrow. Then you stop thinking because your body has made the executive decision to power down. A fringe tidbit? There were medieval laws that limited how much work a peasant could be forced to do in a day. But when enforcement is a nobleman with a stick, those limits tend to blur. Plus, who's going to file a complaint? The straw pile? As you drift to sleep, you realize something. You didn't die today. But it wasn't for lack of trying on the universe's part. You close your eyes. Tomorrow the earth will still need digging. You'll still be the one holding the shovel. Your feet are still sore from yesterday. Every step feels like walking across hot stones, even though the ground is just dirt and dew. Still, you march on because today isn't just any day. You're going on pilgrimage. A journey meant to cleanse your sins, heal your ailments, and maybe score a miracle if the saints are in a good mood. You're not sure if your reasons are noble, or if you just needed an excuse to leave town for a while and dodge a few debts. Either way, you're not alone. There's a caravan of you, farmhands, widows, old men clutching relics, and young ones looking for a story to bring home. Some wear shoes. Most don't. The road is lined with potholes, thieves, and spiritual hope. You carry what little you own in a bundle slung across your back. Stale bread, dried peas, and a coin or two wrapped in a rag and hidden in your boot. That is, assuming no one lifts it while you sleep. You've heard the stories. of people who made it all the way to Santiago or Canterbury or Jerusalem, came back with glowing skin and stories of angels. You've also heard of the ones who didn't make it past the first river crossing. The road itself is a trial. Your feet blister within hours. A dog follows you for a bit, then wisely decides you're not worth the loyalty. You pass corpses too, real ones. Shallow graves by the side of the road, marked with sticks and hopeful prayers. Some are pilgrims who got sick. Some probably ran into bandits. Historians still argue whether bandits were truly as common as the tales say, but your gut tells you not to test it. There's a priest with your group. He says prayers every night and offers to absolve sins for anyone who donates bread. You give him a crust and say nothing about the fact that you stole it from a sleeping companion. You figure one sin for another, it balances maybe. Then comes the fever. It starts with a chill, then heat, then your joints turn to gravel. You sweat through your tunic and someone checks your forehead and mumbles about bad humors. They suggest lancing your skin to let the sickness out. You respectfully decline. Later, you're not sure if declining was the right call. A woman gives you something to chew. Bitter herbs wrapped in cloth. Tastes like spoiled onions and regret. She says her grandmother swore by it. You chew. You pray. You sweat some more. A mainstream fact? Many pilgrimages in the Middle Ages doubled as vacations. Seriously. For some folks, it was their only chance to leave home and see the world, even if it involved blisters, lice, and dysentery. You wake one morning to find the group has moved on without you. You expected this. Still it stinks. You're lying under a tree, your pack half looted by animals or fellow pilgrims. Same difference, really. You try to sit up. Everything hurts. Even your hair aches. But somehow you make it to the next village. A kindly shepherd gives you water. A child stares at you like you're already a ghost. You catch your reflection in a puddle. Honestly, you agree. You hobble onward, hoping to at least see the spires of a shrine before your legs give out. And you do. Sort of. It's smaller than you imagined. Just a stone chapel hunched between two hills. But it's holy. People kneel at its steps, some crying, some kissing the worn threshold. You collapse beside a statue and feel tears in your eyes, whether from relief or pain you can't tell. They offer you soup. It's hot and that's enough. You drink it slowly, savoring every pulse of warmth. A monk touches your shoulder, says something in Latin. You don't understand, but the tone feels right. Calming. You sleep that night on straw that isn't yours. No one kicks you out. The fire crackles. Someone sings softly in the next room. An old tune, maybe from before the plague. A fringe tidbit? Some pilgrims carried little souvenir badges, made of lead, shaped like the saint they visited. You find one under your blanket, a small cross with strange writing. You tuck it into your pocket. Maybe it's lucky. Maybe someone else died and left it behind. Either way, it's yours now. You wake up weaker but lighter, like something heavy has been pulled from your chest. Maybe it was just soup and sleep. Or maybe, just maybe, the pilgrimage did what it was supposed to. Historians still debate whether the average pilgrim found true healing or simply the illusion of peace. But illusions have power. Sometimes believing you're safe is enough to get you one more day. You leave the shrine with fewer belongings, more blisters, and something new in your chest. Not hope exactly. More like acceptance. You'll walk home slow. Maybe find a cart that doesn't mind an extra passenger. Or maybe you won't go home at all. Maybe the road is home now. The people, the stories, the quiet chapel tucked into a hill. Maybe this is where your journey ends, not with a sword or fire or rats, but with your hand pressed against cool stone, whispering thanks to a saint you never met. And now, we drift from the road. The fire from the chapel is still flickering, but fainter now, tucked behind sleepy eyelids. The footsteps you took today grow soft, like echoes folding into moss and silence. The aches in your body begin to dissolve into warmth, the kind that only comes when the work is done and the night is still. Even in a time of chaos, violence, and fear, there were moments like this, where the stars blinked over quiet villages, where the wind hummed across the hills, and where you, simply by surviving, became part of something older than memory. The worst ways to die were many. Brutal, strange, unfair. But they weren't the whole story. Beneath all the horror and hardship, there was endurance. There were songs passed down, meals shared, candles lit at windows, and hope. You're still here. You've made it to the end of the tale, and maybe, just maybe, you've come out a little wiser, a little softer. So let your breath slow. Let your body rest. You're safe now, far from the gallows, the fire pits, the fevers, and the forgotten fields. Let the past stay tucked away behind closed doors, like a storybook you're not quite ready to reopen. Close your eyes, traveler. The Middle Ages are behind you now. You're home. Sweet dreams.